you know, central banks on a global scale, or what I would call global scale central bank, call it G20, G10, whatever. Does this ultimately lead to, as this unfolds, does it lead to the potential for a more coordinated approach to synthetic global digital currencies that can exist and denominate new units of account that are actually not just dollars, but that are synthetic? And is this a forcing function on a road towards that? And maybe Bitcoin's even part of that, because it's a really attractive non-sovereign store of value, just like all fiat used to have a peg to gold. Like, does a synthetic fiat currency basket with a peg to Bitcoin become a future, the Bancor? Does something like that emerge out of this sort of little mosaic we have?
Well, that's where you start to get really disruptive to the United States. And that's where I think that discussion gets really interesting. I thought it was interesting that Mark Carney's sort of parting thoughts at Jackson Hole a year or two ago really had to do with that idea of creating this Bancor-like instrument. In that world, I think that the U.S.'s ability to be that apex predator of money really is compromised. But certainly the incentives to have something like that, if you're one of those G10 countries, certainly exists.
I mean, I would say the issuing the dollar was the quote unquote exorbitant privilege for a while, but it's probably worked against most Americans for the last 20, 30 years. The dollar trades at a structural premium because it's the world's reserve currency. Yeah. And that's part of the reason the manufacturing has been offshored. Our exports are less competitive. So a lot of Americans don't know this, but I think they would massively benefit from a weaker dollar and something like a Bancor to solve effectively the Triffin dilemma.
Yes.
So it's kind of a weird situation where lots of policymakers want the world to be united on a single ledger that basically settles back to the dollar through New York, through the correspondent banking system, because they get all this really granular power projection ability.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the American middle class gets kind of shredded by the fact that our dollar is so strong. So if, I wouldn't even necessarily object to a weaker dollar. I think it would be kind of in line with welfare maximization.
But I think like there's like this forcing function bottom up phenomenon that could be this catalyst that just forces these big players to kind of get together and think through how to solve for this. That's one dimension, right? There's I think coming back to the very start and part of your thesis, which is, these crypto dollars or let's just say high quality digital bearer fiat instruments or synthetic fiat instruments, whatever these end up being, right? That they very powerfully enable commerce interactions to take place. They theoretically bring the world economic system, makes it more integrated, enables market participants, individuals, creators, laborers, firms, et cetera, to sort of have a different level of commerce taking place. And that, it may be that, the leaps forward that emerge from that over 10 years that also become forcing functions to trying to say, hey, why don't we just get to a different unit of account here? And if you read Ray Dalio's recent history books, whatever you want to call it, in these super cycles and in these monetary regime super cycles, and looking at the United States, looking at China, the inevitability of China being the dominant economy in the world in the next 5 years seems like largest at least, and the fact that more trade will be denominated in digital yuan. Those issues might come more to the forefront in 5 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, to replace a global reserve currency, you need an incredibly overwhelming new superpower to underwrite that. It doesn't seem clear that China could do that today. There hasn't been a global realignment as of yet. Often it follows some sort of political turmoil, some sort of transition. World War I was really the event which, took the pound sterling off and installed the dollar. I don't see, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe something will happen, who knows? But if it doesn't seem to me, it's not clear that there's an alternative to the dollar right now. I know everyone likes to predict the fall of the dollar as the reserve currency. Maybe the future is just a number of interlocking currencies that trade can settle in. And some of them politically neutral currencies like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that some sort of a blended currency, like a Bancor, would be more palatable. I think the other interesting thing there is just if you think about the ability for the U.S. government to enforce sanctions on a huge scale, and just large swaths of the financial services infrastructure landscape has really become an enforcement arm of the U.S. government in a lot of different ways. And what moving off of a dollar standard would do to that ability to really have visibility into those type of transactions, I think that's a big open question that there will be a lot of pushback if we move towards something that is not dollar denominated.